America, welcome into the Business Pulse, brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, the pro-American business network. Find them online at freedomchamber.net. I'm Chuck Barham, your host. I'm joined by Rod Martin, the CEO of Martin Capital, and the Martin Report. You can find him online at rodmartin.org. And also Dean Owen, CPA. You can find him online at owencpa.com. The big, beautiful bill has been signed. It's now in all of its glory. But the big question, Rod, is what's inside of it? I'm going to start with you, bud.
Well, the biggest and most important thing is that it makes permanent the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, which is the Trump tax cuts. And permanence matters. Dean can certainly tell you it's very hard to plan if you don't know what the rules are going to be next year. And now we know, including full business expensing and lots of great things. And look, Art Laffer and Steve Moore are exactly right, and Grover Norquist are all exactly right on this. This is a huge pro-growth bill that is truly transformative. Grover keeps saying it's going to change the world. Yeah, it absolutely is. It's going to spark a boom. We had averaged around 3% GDP growth annually from the end of World War II until Barack Obama. And, then we start hitting 2% and 1.8% and all these ridiculous numbers. Well, the difference in that is doubling the economy every 50 years instead of every 25. It's just extraordinarily a different outcome, especially for young people trying to make their way in the world, trying to buy a home, trying to start a career. Those things just become very, very difficult in the absence of growth. And the other side of that coin is that if you hit 3% growth, we eliminate the deficit. We get into surplus territory really fast. We start paying down the debt. You hit 3.5% annual growth or 4% annual growth, which are absolutely possible. We certainly achieved those things during the Reagan years. If you do those things, we are swimming in money, which is another way of saying we can get an even bigger tax cut and even more growth, and America is dominant out to the horizon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you think about all the little pieces, and as a professional, I hate this bill because it's going to make taxes a hot mess. But as a patriot and a conservative, I love what it does. I realize that there's talk that it's going to blow in the debt. I don't believe we need to pay much attention to that. And even if that was accurate, fight the battle you got to fight today, fight the battle tomorrow. But $10,000 deduction for interest on American-made cars. Well, that's not a whole lot of money, but it sure helps with the American car manufacturers. And who do they hire? Upper middle income people and workers. And they create a lot of jobs. So you think about just the onshoring that piece is going to do, the piece about the no tax on tips and tariffs. How many people is that going to bring into the workforce? If we're at 63, 64% wage or worker participation rate, we get that 68, 69, boom, shazam, there's another percent of GDP growth. And you start adding all of this stuff together. I was on a peer panel discussion just a little earlier, right before I got on here, with a peer group of CPA financial advisors that I've been leading for 25 years. And there was lots of negativity. There was a lot of things they didn't know about the good stuff. They were way overstating the possible negatives. And then when I started going through, this is what's in this bill, you're going to get a $6,000 additional standard deduction for those age 65 and over, which a lot of them are clients. That's $12,000 for a couple. 12,000 times their tax rate starts to add up a little bit of money. Yeah, there's additional child tax credits. We bring people into the workforce. There's reductions, interest cuts for U.S. cars. There's a ton of stuff in this bill that's really, really positive. $40,000 SALT cap deduction that increased by a factor of 4, and they left the pass-through entity trick in there, so you still can get it all. So most people should not have to worry about the SALT taxes. Those are state and local taxes that, your property taxes, your income taxes for the state and all that kind of stuff. There's probably a workaround on those if you know how. And people, how do people not know? Are they not talking to somebody competent to realize that the Medicaid cuts are going only to illegals and only to able-bodied people who are 19 to 55 years old and do not have child rearing responsibilities, who won't go out and work, volunteer, or go to school. That's who, I mean, we need them in the workforce. So we're offering a carrot and a stick. A carrot is no tax on tips and overtime. The stick is, if you're not willing to work, quit living off the government tit. It's not that
Yes.
complicated.
And all of this is tested. It's not just theory. We added work requirements in the 90s. It was incredibly successful. We got rid of them under Obama. We actually did these kinds of things in public policy, and the CBO scored it all as terrible. Of course, we're going to balloon the deficit. It's going to be awful. But in reality, we got 4 years surpluses and paying down the national debt. Now, that got interrupted by 9/11. So we didn't get to continue in that vein. But we had 4 years they promised us would balloon the deficit that actually eliminated it and put us into surplus. So these policies are tested, they're tried. Donald Trump has embraced them precisely because there's empirical data. This is not just Art Laffer drawing a curve on a napkin in a restaurant with Don Rumsfeld anymore. We've tested it in the real world. It works, and what they do doesn't.
The bill's also got an expansion of the ABLE accounts. ABLE accounts are for parents who have a special needs child, or you have someone that you're taking care of who has a handicap, a disability, something. And what happens in those families, and there's not a whole big percentage of the population, but in those families is crushing because they can't leave anything to the kid without losing state or federal aid. Well, they just increased the age. So you have to have had the disability before age 26 under the old law. Now it's 46. They added 20 years to it. And the old rules were $5,000 contributions. Now they're $19,000. And with a workplace participation plan, it can be up to $40,000 a year. Now those people who are destitute, who are not going to be able to be in the workforce because of a serious mental or physical handicap, mom and dad can prepare for them and leave them money and let them live with dignity and respect. That was not possible before. The 529, the ABLE accounts were so small, they really didn't make a whole big difference. Now they're going to. Unused 529 money, they can be rolled into those ABLE accounts. So if you're a parent of a special needs child, if you're not talking to somebody about ABLE accounts, call us. We'll share that information for free. We want those kids taken care of. We all want everyone to live with dignity and respect.
All right, I'm going to pause you guys there. So we've got some mailbag this week to get into. We've got some of our chamber members that have emailed me, Chuck at freedomsquare.com. We're going to be talking about that later in the program. And then up next, we're going to be joined by the president of Old Glory Bank, Eric Olhausen, will join us next inside the Business Pulse.
The America we grew up loving is at a crossroads. And what happens in the next 18 months will decide the world our children and grandchildren inherit. That's why I started the Rod Martin Report. We're not here to watch. We're here to understand, to prepare, and to lead. Our premium members get the real story, the deep dives, the special reports, the insights you can actually use, because we're not just playing defense anymore. We're building the future, one informed leader at a time. Right now, you can join us and lock in our early subscriber discount, but not for long. When the window closes, it's closed. If you love this country, if you believe we're still called to something greater, click the button below. Join us. Let's fight for a future we can be proud of.
Welcome back into the Business Pulse. I'm Chuck Barham, joined by Rod Martin, Dean Owen, and Eric Olhausen, president, co-founder. Old Glory Bank has joined us. And Eric, it's great to have you here. You're one of the co-founders of the Freedom Chamber, and we couldn't be happier to have you on board and talk about what's going on at Old Glory Bank. And I'm just going to toss this out there. Old Glory Bank, you need to do business with them. And I'll tell you why, because they take care of their customers. They jumped into this and took care of the people that were being debanked. We just talked about that in a couple of segments ago, and people that really needed help during the, the wokeness that had taken hold in America. So I applaud what Old Glory Bank is doing. And now they're getting ready to get into the crypto market. So I'm going to step aside and let you three gentlemen talk about that. Eric, walk us through what Old Glory Bank's got going on.
Sure. No, great to be here. Joy, always seeing everyone here. Real quickly about Old Glory Bank. We are a fully digital first online bank customers in every state of the union. We were founded, the concept occurred to me in late 2020 after watching all the craziness going on in the riots, people kneeling for the anthem. And I just got tired of yelling at the TV and said, we need a bank that's pro-America, that supports the flag and our military and first responders. And as we started pulling together the concepts of really putting Old Glory Bank in place, the whole debanking and data sharing concept started to get more and more out in the open of, the big banks colluding with the feds and the prying eyes of the feds as to transaction data. And in the very core of our reason to be is the belief that everyone, so long as they're lawfully operating, should have the right to participate in our economy. And first and foremost, that requires being able to participate in our banking system. Really early on, these ideas we were voicing started to draw the attention of some really prominent co-founders who joined me early on. Secretary Ben Carson and Larry Elder are both on our board. They're co-founders with me and the rest of the great team at Old Glory Bank. We've got John Rich, country singer and businessman. John Rich is one of our co-founders and very prominent spokesman for the bank. Sean Spicer recently joined our board. Bill Shine was deputy chief of staff in the first Trump administration. Mary Fallon Christensen, former governor, two-term governor of Oklahoma, which is where the bank is that we purchased. But customers are in every state of the union. We went from about 300 customers to over 55,000 customers in the course of about 18 months of launching the digital bank. And with that in mind, our whole mission is privacy, security, and liberty. And with more and more becoming feasible in the established banking space with the crypto markets, the Genius Act coming out has some really interesting things that we are looking to put in place that are consistent with really fulfilling that promise of privacy, security, and liberty to our customers.
Rod and Dean, join in the conversation. If you've got questions for Eric about how things are going or how that crypto market's going to work, please.
Well, in point of fact, that is the question. How is it going? And how soon can we expect you to be globally dominant?
Okay. I would say what I think where we have the most promise is in markets that are underserved by today's established financial services, and one area is the firearms space. We as a bank are a very rare participant exhibiting at SHOT Show, NRA annual meeting, the Gun Owners Association of America. Those are areas, I know, Rod, you're very familiar with PayPal's story and having been a key member of it. They are one of the most egregious cancelers of the Second Amendment industry. In fact, we talk about it quite often. And so a lot of our tools that we are putting in place, we have our own proprietary version of PayPal called Old Glory Pay that we established as a cancel-proof version that would serve all participants. And it's on both sides of the transaction. The merchants who are looking to not be debanked by their traditional banks, and then the customers who want to have some anonymity as they go about exercising their constitutional rights and don't want that transaction necessarily reported when it's just a normal event. People don't report when you buy a car. Why is it that MasterCard and Visa and the big banks are reporting tracking those kinds of transactions? And so with crypto, certainly the stable coins and launching versions of stable coin allow really the best of both worlds, where individuals and merchants can get all the benefits of blockchain and the smart contracts and the flexibility of international remittances and so forth, but without the volatility that typically can be associated with true cryptocurrencies not pegged. So we are certainly not able to announce specific dates and things, but I think like a lot of participants in the space, we have some really good tools to leverage and enhance with a lot of things that are opening up there in that space.
Well, and you're right to call out PayPal. Just very briefly, I want to remind everybody something they've probably forgotten, but a bunch of us had to actually give up our PayPal accounts a few years ago, which was painful for me. I mean, I had one of the first ones, and it was, it's pretty emotional, but the truth is we sold the company at the end of 2002. The new kids have a different view of things. And what happened, you'll recall, is they actually floated new terms of service in which they took upon themselves the right to take up to $2,500 out of your bank account per instance of you posting something on social media they didn't approve of. I mean, this is just a tool to bankrupt people and get them to agree to it. It is horrifying. And of course, they backed off of that really hard. But I guarantee you, if Kamala had won, they would have been right back there. So you've got to be with financial institutions you can trust. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, today, I mean, PayPal, cancels just en masse anyone in the Second Amendment, firearms industry. It's in their terms of use, as what you referred to in the same paragraph when they say you're not allowed to use PayPal for the exchange of stolen property and illicit drugs. Thirdly, it says firearms and ammunition. So, lumping it together with unlawful activity, not just lawful activity, but constitutionally protected lawful activity such as firearms. So yeah, it's really, really astounding. And we certainly encourage people to vote with their feet, vote with their dollars, and support institutions. It's just like, it's very analogous to supporting free speech and being against censorship. And you want to support those who support those concepts. And Old Glory Bank is certainly one that, and it is absolutely in our DNA. It's why we formed, was to protect individuals' rights to participate in our financial system.
Well, from my standpoint, I know that there's a lot of nefarious things that can be done with stablecoin, Bitcoin, where that could be, fuel an underground economy, and a lot of very nefarious things. Yeah. So from my standpoint, you want to be with an institution who's going to be aware of that, be able to when those things are happening, that's when we get the right authorities involved. But when people are simply exercising their Second Amendment rights, their God-given gift to go out and do as they want to and protect themselves, then, those things are all fine. We don't have any problem with that. So we need financial institutions who share our values, our belief systems, and then we can make those judgment calls and we can get it right then. Instead of this big corporate mentality that just goes dark and, you've got one size fits all, big box mentality. Yeah. So I very much applaud what Old Glory's doing, very much.
Well, thank you. And I'll point out, we made some decisions early on actually to go the more difficult route, which is to actually be an FDIC and chartered bank. It would have been a whole lot easier to do as many financial services businesses out there do, where they use a third-party issuer behind the scenes. But we always felt that it would be a hollow promise to our customers. If we're not the actual bank having the autonomy of an independent bank to truly be the one that's deciding who can bank with us, it's just a hollow promise to say you're not going to cancel customers. So it's a much more difficult route, but I think that should give people a lot of comfort that in working with Old Glory, it's Old Glory Bank. It's not oldglory.com, so to speak.
Right.
Understood. Eric, thank you so much for all that you do at Old Glory Bank. Thank you for your trust in becoming a founding member of the Freedom Chamber. What we're building here is incredibly important, and I highly recommend everybody that's watching this to go out and open an account at Old Glory Bank. You can find them online at oldglorybank.com. Eric, you're one of the good ones. We appreciate all that you do there at Old Glory Bank, and blessings to you, and thanks for being on Inside the Business Pulse.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
My name is Dean Owen. I'm a CPA. I have a master's degree in taxation and a personal financial specialist. Tax laws are always changing. That's why you need a tax strategist, not just a tax preparer. You need someone to help you pay the least amount of tax legally. Because if your business and retirement tax planning is not tax smart, It's probably tax dumb. Let's fix that today. Call me. Let's disinherit the government and not your kids. That's what my team and I do. This is who we are. I'm a combat veteran, unapologetically American, unapologetically pro-God, pro-life, and pro-Second Amendment. If those are the values you seek in a tax and money advisor, call us. Again, let's disinherit the government and not your kids. We're not afraid to share our values, and we share them with you.
America, welcome back to the Business Pulse. It's time to dive into the email bag. You can email me, chuck@freedomsquare.com. We've got some chamber members that have questions for you, Rod, and for you, Dean. And this is the first one coming from the Human Events Media Group out of Tennessee. President Trump just announced another extension of some tariff deadlines. What are some of the consequences, intended or otherwise, of the shifting tariff landscape? Rod, we'll let you jump in on this one first, bud.
Yeah, Trump is always keeping his opponents off guard. And if they behave well, he gives them carrots. And if they don't, he gives them sticks. Japan and South Korea just discovered that in much the same way that the EU did a few weeks ago. If you're not making progress at the negotiating table, he's just going to nuke you. And this is extremely effective. We've already got the deal that everybody said we couldn't get with China. That's not perfect and it's not finished, but it's a heck of a long way further down the road than all the pundits said would happen. We've got a good deal with the UK. We've got a fantastic deal with Vietnam. And we're just going to see a whole bunch more roll in over the next few days.
Yeah, I think this is nothing more than negotiation 101. You know, he wrote a book about it, The Art of the Deal. He's pretty transparent about stuff. He gets his way or shoves his way down your throat, and you can give him what he wants nicely, or not, or he'll take it away from you. That's the way he is, and we're at a point in history and a point in this nation's turning that we have to have a bully in the White House, and it's what he is. He's a bully, and he's made for this moment. You know, he's not there to, try to tread lightly, make buddies with everybody. He's there to break it and rebuild it. And that's what this tax bill does. That's what he does. It's what he's done his whole career, and it works. But we don't have 10 years to renegotiate every little deal. We got to do it in months, and that's what he's doing. And if he doesn't get enough progress, he gives them a window. If he doesn't get enough progress, just shuts the door, walks away, and goes somewhere else. That's what he's doing, because he knows in the end those countries will have to capitulate to our demands. He knows that, and they're gonna. There's a guy named Larry Wingate. He calls himself the world's first irritational speaker. He says, if you're sitting in a chair or something, you don't move until you're uncomfortable enough. So the chair I'm in is pretty comfortable, but if I sit in one spot long enough, then I'll move my butt around a little bit because I get uncomfortable. Well, these countries, when they get uncomfortable enough, they'll shift. Now, what's that deadline? How far out is that? Now, if they had any intelligence about them and they're smart about it, they would figure out a way to do this quick and quietly and made peace, made nice. But I understand some of them have got internal political pressures and all kinds of other stuff that none of them want to be seen as caving to the United States. But that's what they're going to have to do. And they can either swallow a pill and get it over with or not. Instead of saying, if you got to eat a frog today, when do you do it? Very first thing, get it over with.
Well, they've got the whole American left telling him it isn't real and that he doesn't mean it and that he'll cave and taco. No, that's not what's going to happen. Donald Trump, more than possibly any politician or political leader of our lifetime, understands that we're in the driver's seat, that this is the largest consumer market in the world, 26% of the global economy, despite being just 4% of the global population, and they all need us. And he is saying it correctly when he sends these letters just announcing what they're going to pay. They all read something to the effect of, congratulations on getting to do business with America. You will have access to our markets. Here's what you're going to pay for it. And this is exactly the right attitude. This is the correct America first attitude. And we can get to 0 tariffs with all of these guys if they will just play fair.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Back into the email bag. Chuck at freedomsquare.com is where you can email your question in for Rod and for Dean. This one comes out of Illinois at TMS Solutions. Why is the CBO still operating? Dean, please answer.
I think it's the you fight the biggest fights you got to fight when you got to fight them, and that's a fight that needs to be had. But there's bigger fights that have to go on first. The left is going to scream bloody murder about how they're some kind of watchdog when they're not a watchdog. They're a political hack for the left. But what energy do you spend? You only got so much energy, so many days, so much time, so much political capital. What are you going to spend that on? And you got to get the biggest things done first. And yes, the CBO is a problem, but it's not as big a problem as China, as Iran, as trade deals. So we're fighting the biggest fights first. Fight today, fight tomorrow, fight tomorrow. That's my
Or
opinion.
avoiding the biggest tax hike in American history, which is what we just did by passing the big, beautiful bill. And the truth is, Donald Trump has no control over the CBO. That's a Congress thing. And you might have noticed we have razor thin majorities in both houses. We also have the very real prospect that the Democrats could win the midterms. I don't think they will, but they could. And at some point, they're going to win. And when that happens, if John Thune fires the parliamentarian and brings in one more to his liking, or, makes some move on the CBO, which, by the way, would probably take 60 votes. Pretty sure it would. I don't think you can do that in reconciliation. So he does these things, and he's going to eat it down the line in the same way that the Democrats did when they removed the judicial filibuster.
Great answers to the question. Gentlemen, the Business Pulse been brought to you by the Freedom Chamber, the Pro-American Business Network. Highly recommend that anybody watching this sign up for the Martin Report at rodmartin.org. If you're looking for a new CPA that's going to be on your side, go hit up Dean Owen at owencpa.com. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. And thank you both for being inside the Freedom Chamber and inside the Business Pulse.
Thanks for having us.